Let's look through these pictures. So first we've got duragage, Prasanna. I tried to make a dialect from the show Doctor Who. Please let me know how I can improve it. Alright, let's have a look. So we had two pictures here, this one and then this one. I would say that this is probably an edited image rather than a new render. So I'm gonna look at this one because I feel like it's just a bit more interesting, but it's basically all the same models. So we can probably crop this a bit, either a bit tighter or move the Dalek slightly to the side, and then having a bit of a better placement of maybe a big bush and some rocks over on this side to balance it out. Your use of the ground, you could add some maybe more cracks to give it a bit more context, maybe a bit more moss as well in some of the areas. These rocks, I would add a bit more resolution or a bit more polygons to give it a bit more depth, a bit more roundness too. Still keeping some jagged edges, but not having that sort of sharpness, like actually trying to still make it look a bit more like a rock. Like this one, how it still looks quite soft, while this one looks very jagged, which isn't really normally how rocks would form. Also adding some textures onto this grass too. I like that you placed it at where the pavement meets together, which is how grass should be coming out of the ground. In terms of the Dalek too, just being aware of your UV maps so that the textures don't stretch, and also consider how you model the actual piece to remember how the parts move of the Dalek. I do like the light coming through too, and especially some of the colours that you used. It's a good piece to begin with, but yeah, there's still a fair few things that I think you can look into. I do like the lighting. I would even consider maybe having a secondary light coming just to light up this area just with a slightly different colour. Overall, really good job. Yeah, nice work. Then we've got onlinecanadianboy. Work in progress. What should I improve on this render? Besides the noise, I'll fix that, of course. Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, so we do see a bit of a noise around. But in terms of modeling, everything seems pretty okay, a little bit simplistic in some cases. So I would say the first thing with this dagger, maybe just making this end bit a little bit smaller or like flatter so that it can lie on the ground a bit more, but just because, like, in terms of a bit more realism, but that's something to research. I do like that you've thought about the leaf falling off and then landing on the table. That's really cool. I would maybe even add a light shining in, coming from our point of view, maybe just slightly to the side, just to light up some of these blacker areas. I really like the reflections that you've used, the sense of scale. I do like how the curtains do have that bit of curve, but just think of the realism and stuff about how they would fall down and curve in just a slightly different way, but that takes a bit of practice. I like the textures that you used on the wall. I would be aware of how you've formed these windows, just as there's some issues with the polygon, like the rendering here. It might be that there's some really highly stretched polygons in there. It's just something to look into. And I would give these paintings just a little bit of like a normal map bump or something, just so then you can maybe catch just the print edge a little bit more, as they're basically just turning into grey squares. Or just adjust the lighting slightly, maybe give them a bit more reflection or even a bit more of a matte look, just so that we can see the details on them a little bit more. I really like the colour that you've used in the light shining out of this wall, and I think that a secondary light to shine on these statues will really give them a bit more depth, especially because they do look like some nice high quality statues. And composition is interesting. I would say it's okay for the moment. You could adjust the camera just slightly, maybe just look into stuff like field of view and the positioning. Probably still keep it at this height, But yeah, I reckon that you could explore a bit more with composition and make something a bit more interesting. Maybe choosing more of a focus rather than the whole room. So maybe choosing the piano, the windows, or the statues, and using the plants as foreground to give that depth. But yeah, that's great. Okay, and then we've got emojiman, abandoned railway station. So he's given a few different ones, or she, have to assume that different ones with different lighting or at different times of day. Personally, I'm not a fan of the yellow splotches. I do sort of get what you're going with there, but I just don't feel like it hit the mark. I reckon if you were to shrink them down a little bit, make them a whole lot more transparent, it could go with that sort of dustier look that you've wanted to get. I'm going to go with this image because it's my favourite image, just with the slight yellow. Gives it a bit more of a more natural look. Just checking that I'm recording. Cool. Okay. Alright, let's go in now and have a bit more look at the details. Okay, so you it seems like you've got a nice use of textures going on here. I like the use of depth of field and the angle of the lighting. The modelling seems really nice with how you've put everything together. And maybe just adjusting slightly the front of this just to make it a bit more refined. I feel like it's quite simplistic there, as well as some other just little areas of the train. And the use of plants really adds to it. Consider why the plants are there though, because they would be coming out of the cracks and then growing over. These sort of just looks like it's placed on top of the concrete. And be aware as well of how you've used probably a planar projection or a from view projection, and then we've got this this sort of banding across here because of how you've used your UV maps. I would just go in and add another UV map in there, especially one with a bit more cracks to give that idea that this is all broken up in here. And I would just consider adding a bit more dimension to this, so it's not a strict line going down. So just maybe even modeling it in, and you can see as well that the bricks don't actually connect up correctly. So it's just going into those details, adding in a bit more like of a curve to this, so it's not as low poly, just to give it that nice smooth curve going on. And I do like the curves and stuff that you've got going on here. I think that adds like a kind of bizarre warped feel to it, or as if it's been damaged over time. If it has been damaged, I would look into maybe adding just a bit more specific details into the areas where it would have been hit. I know you've got something here, but just as if like the paint or something's been ripped off. And composition is good. I would probably just cut to like cut it down a little bit more to tighten it. Maybe move this tree over a bit closer, I would say. And this is probably a common thing that everybody has a lot of their pieces spread out. Try and really compact it in and place the pieces that you've got spread out now in a bit tighter. But that's just me, like, because then you can have, rather than everything spread out, it'll make things feel a bit more older and bushier and stuff. But really nice work. You've really got something good going on. Alright, and then we've got K3 Peck or KPEC. Hey guys, what should I change, improve on this render? Please roast my render. Be brutal. We've got a lot of different comments, but I'm just I've read a little bit through it, but I'm just going to have a look through myself. Okay, so overall I'm pretty happy with this composition. The lighting coming through is really nice in terms of placement, and good use of general color palette throughout the whole thing. This light definitely catches my attention. I would add a bit more bloom to it, just so that it as if the camera looking at it is catching that light spraying out a bit more. But contextually too, I'd be thinking, why is this light on if there's all this light shining in and through? as well as it not emitting any light coming around. So if you wanted to, you can throw a little white point light in there, or slightly off white into like a blue to get that I think it's iridescent lighting, like the inside lighting. And then let's look at it through its basic elements. These are quite simply made, and obviously there's not much detail probably in the actual models you base this off, but I would use just even a slight texture like a brushed metal on it, and using it's hard to see, but using a slight bevel just around the edges of these so it can catch the light in a bit more of an interesting way. But I do like the amount of reflection. It makes it look quite natural. With these bits of wood, you've obviously copied and pasted this across. I would look into getting at least like 3 to 5 different, slightly different textures, maybe that you've adjusted slightly so it doesn't repeat as much, or like trying to make it look like, even though it is cut from the same bit of wood, that there's some adjustment going through. So you could adjust even the color slightly, like to be a darker brown or a bit more of a green. As someone else pointed out, that there was the curtains, they don't have a rod in there. Just being aware of those little things. It doesn't need to be much, but just to place it. I like that you have caught the reflection in this window really nicely. I think that it reminds me of things in my home, and so that's like a good connecting piece to, like, for this, giving it some realism. Adding in a bit more on polygons to get a nicer curve into these leaves. The texture is nice, I'd be happy with that. It's just that it's a bit too blocky in what looks natural, but the amount that you've got there and the use is really good. I'd even just be considering maybe getting some subsurface scattering just to make them look a bit more natural like leaves, rather than being like you might have done that, but maybe just subtly. I'd just be exploring that. Adding some slight reflections to the pot too, just to give it a bit more dimension, because at the moment it's just a black spot. Adding a bit more of a bevel just around these windowsills and possibly this wall if you haven't already. It kind of looks like you might have, but just to add just that little bit of extra detail so then light can be caught along there. Floorboards seem to look really good, and I like how you've probably used cloth physics on this just to capture the little movements there. The pillows look really nice, except they look a bit too sheen for a pillow, so I'd be making them look a bit more matte. But in terms of modeling, they look really good. I really love this thing that you've got going on here, like the throw, and the lounge looks great. The rug was done really well. I'm really happy with that, and I would just be looking into the thickness of this this piece here, as in, like, compared to this line here, it should just maybe be a bit thicker if it was the same sort of shape. The magazine should have some extra pages that are lying flat, because not all the pages would be bunched up like that normally. Like, it could just add a bit more realism to have a flat piece. And then lastly, with your mug, I can see that you have the handle just here. To make it make a bit more sense, I would just rotate it around so we can see the handle clearly. It doesn't need to be all the way around, but just seeing it a bit more clearly, because at the moment it just looks like a strange bump, just to give it a bit more context. You could also probably move the phone over here a little bit more, maybe in, like, so it has a bit more of a silhouette, because I haven't noticed that until right now, and I've been looking at this piece for a bit beforehand. Okay, yeah, that's all I would say about that. Overall, really good piece. Like that, the picture frame, it was great. It's quite a simple thing, but it's really good. Okay, next one. We've got Nihiro 23 BC. Smoke, just try. Okay. I don't think this has any sound anyway. Alright, so I would say that with the animation, you've probably got it from somewhere like Mixamo or something, and So I'm not going to critique it all on the animation, except for the fact that the hands don't actually go on the ground, which is something to look into. You've got a few little strange artifacty shadows here, probably just by the settings. Like, I'm not going to be too harsh on you, because I would say that this was just like an early thing, but also make some variation in the sand falling, because if I can get a shot, you can see those nice bands and stuff, like the contours and stuff coming down. If you can just add a bit more variation to it so it looks a bit more natural, as well as maybe it piling up on the ground. But I know that you said that this was smoke, so maybe removing gravity so that it can flow out a little bit more, maybe even just slight gravity so it will be flowing to the ground. Again, this is still an experiment. I like that you've used a light from behind too, to really capture that sort of rim around it. I would be considering maybe cropping this a little bit tighter, but that's just me. Like, overall, really good job. Yeah. Okay, we got Proud and Happy. I created the candy bar. It has a red cream in the shape of a swirl inside. Can't see it, so I'll take your word for it. Alright, so pretty nice. I would say this is one of your early renders. I'd be looking into things like cropping, so we can crop the bottom picture out, just so that we have a bit more of a focus on the candy bar. Adding a bit more of a reflection on the ground so that it can make it a bit more obvious. I would adjust the angle of the light so that the shadow can maybe fall on the wall behind it a little bit more and just be a bit softer. I would add a bit more of a bevel around the edge, maybe adding some crinkling in. You could go in and sculpting this in a little bit more, but there's also other like cloth physics and stuff that you could use for this, and especially adding maybe a HDRI into the Blender file, like the project, just so that we can render out like some nice reflections and stuff. But yeah, overall great job. Like, good use of colors, good logo design, and I love the story behind it. Awesome work. Alright, and then we've got Paul's Rage, my real-time scene in Unreal Engine 5, Lumen plus Megascans plus most objects modeled in Blender. Do you have any suggestions how to make it more realistic? Interesting. Okay, so we've got a fairly realistic scene as it goes around. Good use of lighting. I would say it's got some good normal maps. Okay, and then we've got use of motion blur. I'm not sure if we've put it in there, but like a bit of bloom, bit of ambient occlusion. I think that the color grading is really good. Let's replay that. So yeah, so repeating of textures, I'd just be aware of that, just trying to blend it in just a little bit longer or something maybe. So, because if it was like double the length, then I probably wouldn't notice it. In terms of building the scene, you've done really well with making it looking realistic. And yeah, nice use of motion blur that you've got in there. Now there were a few little scenes, I think, with this plant here as we come up. Just things, yeah, showing up, like lighting showing up a bit earlier. Just looking into your, what's it called, like draw distance. And I think also some issues with the lighting down here, maybe. No, there's some little errors and stuff that come up here and there, like flickering and stuff, so just be looking into that. I would be implementing some effects So maybe like just very small like haze or dust, as well as maybe possibly like birds and stuff in the background. Where is there sound? No, I don't think there's any sound. Adding just some like footsteps, some ambient atmosphere, and yeah, like that's all I'm gonna say about that. It's a really good piece. I think you should be proud. Awesome work. Okay, then we've got shrinakee, or shrinakee, I don't know, 987. My first render without a tutorial. I think it turned out okay, but could use your guys' feedback on how to make it look better. Okay, yeah, you did a great job. Alright, so you've got some nice reflections going on there. You got a nice model. I'd be putting a bit more of a bevel on these edges just to smooth it out a little bit more. Keep refining the shaping and position of your polygons, just so that it becomes maybe a bit more stylized, a bit more beautiful and stuff. With these wheels, I'd be adding a bit more resolution to them, maybe adding subdivisions and smoothing it out so they look like nice and round, adding just a little bit more details on the wheels there, adding in a handle and a reversing window, adding in a bit of bloom on these lights just so it shines out a little bit more. Add some texture. Just it looks like it is textured, but it's a bit stretched. So I'd be looking into a normal map and an albedo texture to go over this. And I would say, yeah, consistently just to look into bevels, but on a really small scale, so that we can capture some light just on the edges of these things here. And looking into texturing, don't always need a color texture, but looking into just normal maps that you might be able to use around. And yeah, maybe looking into putting in an actual piping thing into this, or maybe having a spotlight coming out from the light here, especially as these two front lights too, just to actually give a bit more context in lighting and stuff here. And with the trees, just adding a bit more dimension and stuff to it. But I know that you're going probably for a low poly feel, at least for the moment. But overall, yeah, like you're doing really good. You're making lots of different elements. You're practicing your skills, and I would look into maybe composition, just cutting out the top bit a little bit here, and this side, and maybe adjusting the background color or continuing this on so it goes out into the distance. Maybe just placing a few more trees around and giving a bit more of the grass feel around so that something continues throughout the whole picture. And yeah, looking into, like, say, repeating this lamppost a little bit more, making it a bit more of a full scene. But overall, it's early days and you're doing awesome. Okay, then we've got stallionpersia. Thoughts on this scene I made? Also, if there's anything you would add to it to make it feel more real. Okay, so composition wise, I would just cut off a little bit more of this top bit here, and I would draw the camera down a little bit more, just so we can see a bit more of this curve and giving the train and the road a little bit more breathing room. Maybe then adding a few more little blocks like fallen soldiers or something, you know, little army men, or like you could add in like, think about the context and stuff of this. If you're purely trying to show the train setup with like the trees and maybe the mountains and little people and stuff along there, then stick with that. Or if you wanted to go into the more like, this is a toy room setup, then looking into other toys like teddy bears or like Matchbox cars or stuff like that, like little plush toys, going into that. In terms of lighting, it's going really good. I love the use of the HDRI. A really nice modeling on this piece, and a really nice use of depth of field. I would say that the depth of field maybe is just a little bit too intense. If you just bring it back slightly, and then maybe looking into what the background wall would be, even just getting a photo of one of your a photo from your room or somewhere online, and just having it as a blurred image as the background could look really nice to just give it a bit more context. But yeah, overall that's really good. Okay, and then we've got Bobby Booney seeking feedback on this. Alright, so it's quite dark. I know that it does bring a lot of attention to this, but I would just be maybe pushing up the color like a little bit more, or the lighting, sorry. Especially that this area here is lighting up things. This would be lighting up this area down here, I would maybe hope. So just spreading out that lighting a little bit more. It's just probably looking into lighting. In terms of composition too, I would maybe have the camera a bit more flush up to this wall so we can focus on this area here, and then maybe adding in something on the side here too, just to tighten our focus on it, because at the moment our eye gazes down here and then exits out really easily into this picture. In terms of modeling, modeling is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with all that. Possibly even like having the chess set in play, because then it'll give it a bit more of an interesting look, and then making it more obvious that it's a chess set. But that's contextually, like this sort of looks like it'd be a person that probably doesn't play chess as much as they'd want, and if they do, they put it back to how it would be when they're finished. They would never stop a chess game halfway through. But yeah, in terms of use of textures, it's really nice. I can't see there any repeating texture, which is good. Oh wait, hang on. It's because you're repeating it along this way, aren't you? So I'd just be looking into that. So yeah, we can see the 3 dots there. So I'd just be looking into that a little bit more, just adjusting the texture slightly once you know how big it needs to be. And yeah, I'd just be adding a second light, maybe coming from behind us or something, just to capture the details that are in here, because they're all getting lost. But yeah, no, great work. Good work, everybody. Alright, that's all we've got for today. Well, at least